Hi, my name is Jeroen de Heert, and today I'm here with Sasha. Hi, Sasha.
Hi, Jerome. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So, what do you do at Microsoft?
I'm a principal program manager at Microsoft, and my responsibility is the business continuity and reliability of the SQL database service, which is a PaaS service, relational database service in Azure.
Cool. And specifically today we're going to talk about the SLA on that PaaS service, right?
That is true. So,
there has been some changes.
Yes, we actually quite excited to announce recently a new version of Azure SQL Database SLA. We published it a few days ago. And it's exciting because it has two major additions that are very notable.
Cool.
One is the highest availability SLA in the industry as of today.
But we had a high availability SLA already, right?
Yes, we had a high availability SLA, as many others, as a matter of fact, and we had this sort of flat SLA for all different service tiers in the service.
Okay.
From general purpose to business critical to hyperscale, it's been a 4.9 SLA or 99.99% of uptime.
Right, the 4 nines.
4 nines.
Yes.
And with this update, we are actually moving it a level higher.
Cool.
For a very specific type of service. So that is the exciting part on the availability front. Now availability using Azure SQL Database can go as high as 99.995%.
So basically, as a customer, I get more reliability, more availability guaranteed that way?
Yes, essentially what that means is your guaranteed availability, or I would say guaranteed the maximum downtime you should expect goes from 52 minutes per year to 26 minutes per year.
That's a
so when you're thinking about building mission critical applications that absolutely have to run at all times without disruptions, that's exactly the kind of metric you're looking for and kind of assurance that that your service provider gives you. And in addition to that highest availability, we also increase the amount of service credit.
Okay.
So if you, for example, detect that we have violated the SLA, for example, we exceeded what we said we would not exceed.
Right, above
then if it goes below 95%, we would give you full month credit for the SQL database cost.
So wait, so whenever we don't meet what we promised, right? As Microsoft doesn't meet what they promised to me as a customer, I will get refunded?
Yes, you will get refunded for full month of running cost of your deployment.
Okay, wow.
We used to have it limited to 25%.
Okay.
But now we actually went ahead and increased it to the full credit for a month.
Okay, wow.
So not only we promise you much higher availability, we sort of stand behind it in a very tangible monetary sense.
Right, exactly. So as a customer, I get more availability guaranteed, and if for whatever reason Microsoft doesn't meet it, I can actually get.
But I think the important part of it is not so much the money part in terms of the compensation, because in reality, the potential business loss from losing the uptime could be much higher than what you pay for your database. It could be some losses of the business, etc. But the message here is that we actually are confident enough in the numbers we published that we are willing to sort of consider the impact on the revenue by paying you back for that price
if it happens.
If it happens.
If it happens, okay.
Because obviously there is no 100% guarantee exists in the cloud.
No.
Or anywhere for that matter.
Right.
It's just a matter of how comfortable and how confident we are in the ability to manage the databases you deploy in Azure with that sort of level of guarantee.
So help me out here. I'm a customer. I'm looking at various options that I have. So how is this different, this SLAs, from other options that I might have?
Well, we actually looked at different other vendors in the cloud space, and like I mentioned before, nobody offers higher than 99.99% as of today, and with varying level of service credits. Actually,
okay.
So this is an important improvement. Now, I have to say that this higher level SLA only available for what we call business critical service tier. It's the highest and arguably more expensive service tier, which is designed for most demanding applications. And sort of as the name suggests, it is for business critical applications. And therefore, we understand that those kinds of applications and those kinds of customers expect this type of operational support and reliability from the service, so that they could, in fact, deploy those applications in the cloud and rely on it for their businesses.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yes. So this is one area of sort of innovation and new value, I would say, to our customers. The other area is the area of what we call business continuity. This is the area that we usually attribute to situations where the outages are so catastrophic that our infrastructure and self-healing mechanisms existing in individual regions cannot sustain.
Right.
For example, if we're talking about an earthquake in the region, or maybe sort of massive power outage, volcano eruptions, and some sort of human activity that causes major downtime of the entire data center, or maybe a substantial part of the data center, so that the infrastructure itself is not capable of handling the automatic processes that guarantee this high availability SLA that I mentioned earlier. In those cases, we advise our customers to create sort of geographic redundancy. So when you run your database in one region, we really expect the mission critical applications to have a redundant standby secondary in a different region.
In another region.
That way, your secondary is synchronized with the primary, but it is isolated by much longer distances, maybe 700 miles. Which means if anything happens in one region, it's very unlikely that the second region would be impacted the same way. So that type of redundancy is very traditional approach. As a matter of fact, it's been used by the industry for many years.
Already on premises with two data centers in disparate regions.
The big difference is the customer had to build out those data centers and pay for them, etc. Whereas in Azure, you can rely on the fact that we have 50 different data centers across the world, or I would say, I would correct myself. I would say 50 different or plus regions. And by the way, many regions have more than one data center. So in those cases, you have to rely on the business continuity part. So you would have to essentially use our API or our user experience tools to provision your secondary standby database in a different region.
So, and if I do that, what as a customer, what do I get from this?
So what you get for this is, first, most customers understand that business continuity has certain trade-offs. And the trade-offs of business continuity is because of the distances and latency involved in networking, you have to use asynchronous replication. That's what we use. Otherwise, we would have very dramatic impact on the performance. So we don't want to do that. So the asynchronous, the downside of the asynchronous replication is potential for data loss. So the customer care about what that actually means. How much of data loss should I expect? And there is a very common metric in the world of business continuity called a recovery point objective. It's actually a period of time of lost transactions before the unplanned event occurred, which would not be replicated and therefore would be potentially lost.
Which could impact your business.
Which could impact your application. So
Sure.
the application has to be resilient to that sort of loss. And typically applications and businesses understand that. If there is a major disaster, they explain to their customer that there's something happened. It's so catastrophic that...
Out of everybody's control.
The challenge is, and the goal here is to contain it within predictable range. You need to be able to say, okay, in a worst case scenario, my data loss would be X.
Right.
So that's what we published. We published an official RPO SLA saying, if you use our geo-replication technology and you deploy your standby secondary database in a different region, your data loss will not exceed 5 seconds.
Okay. So actually, Microsoft is saying to me as a customer, if you follow these guidelines, this is the maximum RPO you can expect.
That's correct. This is a maximum RPO. Well, RPO itself already means maximum. RPO means maximum. So everything within 5 seconds is sort of compliant with the RPO. That's how it's defined on Wikipedia last time I checked.
Okay. I stand corrected.
But you're correct. So maximum is 5 seconds means we guarantee that for majority of all geo-replicated databases, in fact, 99 percentile in each hour will never exceed 5 seconds. How we do that? Essentially, there is a method of monitoring the lag between the primary and the secondary, because replication means you're sending the updates constantly to the secondary, but the secondary receives the updates and acknowledges them with certain lag. That delay, exactly. It takes time because of the laws of physics. And that lag really is what defines the RPO. So we have a mechanism of monitoring the lag, and we know essentially over time we've collected a lot of telemetry to understand what we could expect in terms of the replication lagging. And based on that analysis, we concluded that we could guarantee that RPO. Not only do we guarantee that RPO, again, just like with the availability, we will compensate for 100% of your monthly cost of your secondary database if we somehow violate the RPO. And we measure it in what we call compliant hours, or attained hours. If within the hour, your RPO all of a sudden in 99 percentile exceeds 5 seconds, that's your case for potentially requesting a service credit.
And I asked that for the other SLA as well, right? How does this compare to the other options out there?
Well, that's a great question, because there's no other options to compare with. Nobody has published so far business continuity SLA. And there is a second part of business continuity, which I didn't mention, which is called recovery time objective. And the recovery time objective speaks about not the data loss, but the sort of the delay between the request to fail over to your standby secondary after detecting the outage. And when that secondary becomes fully live
and the primary
and ready to accept the workload and deal with this sort of the traffic that now is presumably will be redirected to this other region so that your application can continue running. And that is also very important, because the first part talks about the data loss. This talks about availability loss. So imagine you have an earthquake in the region you were running your business initially, and that region is not available. And you need to know what kind of delay in constant activity you have to deal with in front of your customer potentially. To sort of say, hey, we will continue our business, but we need to be able to manage that delay. And that's what's called recovery time objectives. It's the quickness with which you can actually recover from losing the primary by failing over to the secondary. So that time is 30 seconds. So if your database is geo-replicated between two regions, and you are running your business and you've requested to fail over because your application indicated that it's not connecting to to the primary, or some other combination of factors that you led you to believe that there is a major outage. You request the failover.
Right.
We fail over for you, and that time should not exceed 30 seconds.
Okay.
So that way you know that in a worst case scenario, even in a very dramatic unplanned events in the primary region, you should be able to recover your database availability within 30 seconds.
Right.
And again, we stand behind that number based on everything that we know about our own service and our own sort of performance of these kinds of operations, to sort of to be prepared to give customers full month's time credit for even a single violation of the failover attempt that does not complete within that period of time.
Within that time, okay.
Yeah, so this is, again, these two factors, or these two metrics, I would say, they are the first in the industry that anybody has published as a legally binding guarantee among all cloud providers.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, so I would also like to go back for a second to the availability, and it's important in the context of the business continuity, because the reason we actually were able to increase our SLA to 99.99% is because the sort of very tight integration of our business critical service tier with availability zones. Microsoft has announced availability zones last year, and the number of regions where the availability zones are supported is gradually increasing. More and more regions actually include multiple data centers. And the reason we are able to give you this much higher SLA is because now the redundancy we maintain within the regions, not only isolated by, let's say, physical machines or physical isolated networks, it's isolated by different physical data centers. They're much closer to one another than, for example, regions. And therefore, we can still do synchronous replication between them. And therefore, there's no data loss involved in those kinds of self-healing operations. But the fact that they're isolated by, let's say, several miles from each other means this type of self-healing and automated, mitigation of failures can withstand much broader range of unplanned events. It could be all the way up to losing the entire building to fire, for example, which earlier we couldn't do. If it's a fire, it's a fire. The building is impacted. Doesn't matter how much technical isolation, power isolation, or networking isolation. There's fire. It doesn't see these barriers. It burns everything. So that type of event used to be a reason for using business continuity, which means you would have to sort of fail over to a different region and tolerate this data loss and 30 seconds downtime. With the ability to rely on availability zones, and it's integrated, you customers do not have to do much about it. In the business critical service tier, you get this higher SLA. This is the main reason we actually were able to do that, because of higher isolation that availability zones provide.
Awesome. So basically, with the combination of these two improvements, for a customer, I get better guaranteed availability, in the case if anything happens, I know what to expect in the failover, in the the earthquake kind of scenario. So I would say I can feel pretty confident about that, right?
Yeah, I actually, not only that, I would go one step further. And I would say not only each of those metrics and SLAs is important in its own right. The combination of the two is the foundation of building mission-critical applications. For example, as I said, the newest availability guarantee means 26 minutes per year of downtime. So the combination of high availability and business continuity provides a way for the application itself to look into ways of increasing the availability above the official guarantees by Microsoft, and build the sort of regional redundancy combined with the I would say geographical redundancy combined with the regional redundancy we provide out of the box. And that potentially could allow customers to architect their apps in a way that they could reduce the potential downtime even further. So this is one main goal for us to publish these SLAs, to say, look, it's a combination of the two that you need to build your mission critical application.
Very cool. Thanks a lot, Sasha.
You're
Thanks
very
for
welcome.
sharing. That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope this was interesting. Thanks for watching, and please like, subscribe to our channel, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.